started. It is our last meeting today. Can everyone hear me? Good. So it's our last meeting today, which is kind of sad for me, probably not for you, but also very happy to be done. That's one thing I do like about this class is it is really fast, I think. And we're going to talk about, finally, we're going to talk about K-pop. But first, just a couple of things here. I'm not sure if these are available to you or not. But every course that you have has a course evaluation. And so the way you get to it is on your Canvas. You just go to account and then course evaluation is one of the options. The course evaluations are really helpful because it helps us understand what we need to change about the course or like what I need to change about my teaching. So I'm not sure because this is a first mini-mester class if it's available, but for students. But check that out if you could, or at the end of the semester, don't forget to file one about this class, even though it'll have been like 8 weeks since you've done it or since you've finished it. But just please keep this in mind. Please do this. You don't really get anything out of it. It's just helpful to me, but it doesn't take very long either. Okay. And the big thing is that we are having our final assignment right after class. It's going to open on Canvas. It is the final exam. And it will be due this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. I'm going to show you it in a minute. And remember that I'm actually only allowed to accept this. So if you're one of those people who turns it in late, you don't have that whole week grace period. You only have until the Friday to turn it into me. That is the school's rule. I'm not allowed to accept assignments after that Friday. Because technically like next week is our finals week for the mini-mester. So the Friday is like the last day of the mini-mester. So I'm not allowed to accept any assignments after that. So keep that in mind. All right, so just to review really quickly, it is the exact same setup as the midterm. One thing I will stress is please remember to include at least one citation to one of the sources from class for either interpret and discuss questions, unless I've otherwise noted it. I think there's one discuss question that doesn't require a citation. That's how the majority of us lost points last time. So let's look really quick. So just like last time, you're going to go to your, is everyone seeing Canvas? Okay, so the week 7 intertextuality, K-pop music videos module, scroll down after class, final exam. So right now, if you click on this, it's just going to show you that it's not available. But at 7:16, it'll look like this. And it should have the document here for you to download, and it should have the images and that you can use these if you want. They are in the document themselves if you want to use it. So I've had students in the past have trouble like the images corrupt or something when they download it from Canvas, stuff like that. So, okay. And by the way, I noticed I only ever had one student bring this to me, but I'm pretty sure it was happening to everyone. I fixed it so it's not, so docx files, so the Microsoft Word files, you can submit them now. I think it was not working for most of them because the file type was incorrectly put in to the assignment thing, but yeah, I fixed that. So it should work for that. Okay, so when you download it, it's going to look exactly the same way, same directions. Oh, the deadline's wrong though. Let me fix that. I'll fix that deadline. And same directions as before. So first question is about ceramics. Basically, you're going to do a shorter version of the plenary response that we had about the ceramic object, please check this link and make sure it works. And if it does not work, please someone let me know as soon as possible. It works for me, but it goes to a museum collection, and I find that sometimes the links are weird and they don't work for everyone. So please check that. Just like normal, describe, interpret. Pay attention to the questions that you need to answer in the interpret. So your comparative analysis this time is going to be on the subtle ho, which we talked about last week, these two. And this one you do need to have a citation. Notice that on the midterm you didn't have to have a citation, but this one you do. And you have plenty of resources that you can cite about this. You have 2 videos. Ipur. So I wrote this in many of your plenary responses. So when you talk about Ipur's performance, a lot of you just talked about just described the costume, and that's like half the battle. So it says particularly here, describe Ipur's performance as depicted in the photograph. So what you need to put into words is what you see in the photograph. And I try to help you by saying, consider the location and the environment, the observers, the artist, how she uses her body. And then I even added, describe the costume as like a separate thing. So you're technically describing 2 things. One is the photograph and one is the costume, okay? So I didn't specify that for the plenary response, but that is specified here. Interpret. Okay, and what we're going to talk about today. So what we're going to talk about today is really complicated, I think, anyways. And so when we're talking about the intertextuality, it's just to discuss. I'm not going to have you describe the music video or describe specific scenes in the music video or anything like that. You're just going to like list like, this happens in the music video. This is what it is referencing, okay? And we're going to do that in class today actively. And then this one is just a discuss question about the K-pop industry and like idol training. And then the last question, please don't forget this one because it's on its own page and it's kind of all the way down here. This is just a simple course reflection of a few things that you learned that you found helpful or interesting or valuable to you. And there's no right or wrong answer. There really shouldn't be any reason that you don't get full points for this question, as long as you talk about 3 things. And obviously no citation. Okay, are there any questions about the final? Okay, cool. Excuse me. All right, let me exit this. Good. Okay, so I don't think you should be too stressed about it. Same thing as last time. Just make sure you manage your time. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the history of K-pop, which you don't really get a history of K-pop in the readings, but there's quite a bit of a history to it. And then we're going to look at intertextuality in K-pop. So to start us off, I'm always really interested in different people's perceptions of like what K-pop is or what it's supposed to be. Like, what are some of the signature things about K-pop? So my general question is like, what are your impressions of Korean pop music, like what we see particularly today, right? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you not care? What were like your introduction to it, or like how do you know about it? Everyone kind of has something different. Have you ever even thought about it before this class? What do you think? Just what are things you think of when it comes to K-pop? Yes, it's very dance based and it's very hype. It is. I think K-pop groups, idol groups, you'll hear the word K-pop band sometimes. I don't personally like that. There are K-pop bands like who play instruments, but bands tend to have like an instrument players. It's in like idol group in K-pop studies or K studies. They usually say idol group. Yeah, they're some of the best dancers in the world. I mean, some of the best dancing in the world, right? And most of the songs that, especially that they market, are very upbeat for sure. Very organized dance, yeah. Yeah, in Korea, it's very different from the outside of Korea take on K-pop because in Korea, it's just kind of like normal everyday kind of music. But then, like in North America or Europe or in countries in or Asia and Africa, South America, it's like if you like K-pop, it's like so specific, like you really like it. Yes, it is very visual. The eye-catching outfits, there's a lot put into the way it looks. And that's one thing we're very concerned with in this class. Yeah, for sure. Dreamcatcher. So I'm gonna be honest, I first got into K-pop at the very big, like in 2010, 2009, 2010. So a lot of these, like, I guess they call them fourth wave K-pop groups, like these recent groups, I don't know much about them. But I know a lot of the older groups. Yeah, much more like performers. A lot of them are musicians too, but I think the word performer is also is a little bit more applicable to this case. Kind of like artist, you know. Um, like some of them play instruments and they definitely have musical training, but they're not musicians in the same sense where like they're dedicated to their voice and learning how to sing, right? Yeah, highly produced, very highly produced. Absolutely. Everything is carefully coordinated. Yeah, good. Okay. Very colorful. Yes, very colorful and upbeat. It is very colorful. You can see from this image. That's why I picked this image. Good. Yeah. And family friendly. Oh, that's a good way to put it too. I think, yeah, a lot of it was maybe a decade ago. They were very strict about the way that idols had to portray themselves. You weren't allowed to show skin. You weren't allowed to do anything sexual or anything like that. That has changed a lot, though. That is changing actively. Um, yes, scandals. K-pop idols get into scandals for the silliest things, I think. And I'm gonna mention one of them at the very end, actually, that I've seen. But yeah, weight scandals, dating scandals, like you're not supposed to date, right? Good. Storytelling, yes. And yes, and J-pop, so Japanese pop music. So Japanese pop music is definitely really popular globally. It's has a different kind of following to it than like Korean pop music does, but they're definitely related. Yeah, the fan base of K-pop is very dedicated, and different fan groups for different idol groups. They have a kind of culture about them. Sometimes it's very toxic, right? Yeah, good. Uh-huh. Let's see. Choreographically, Japanese hip hop. Yes. Good. Yeah, exactly. People are obsessed. Good. So there's definitely some aspects about K-pop that are particular. You could call it a music genre. I think there's a lot of music genres that are caught up in K-pop though, like pop, hip hop, um, even classical music ends up showing up in K-pop sometimes. Korean music, like what's called Gugak or Kugak, which is the national music, but Korean music. It's a method of training. Like we said, there's a particular way that it's produced. Fashion is very important, the way it looks. It has its own language. Even if you know Korean, when you listen to K-pop or you look at K-pop lyrics, they're kind of weird. They don't always make any sense. A lot of the times they don't make any sense, actually. And then the social role, which a lot of us started mentioning too. The K-pop idols have a very particular way that they're supposed to be and supposed to act. Um, so one thing is like male idols you still have to serve in the South Korean military, right? That was a big thing with BTS last year. They were trying to fight this rule kind of, or try and get leeway, and it didn't work out for them. You can't be eccentric. So that goes back to the idea of you can't be dating necessarily, or you're only allowed to date certain kinds of people. Um, Another big thing is like what kind of medications do you openly take? What kind of surgeries do you have? Such as plastic surgery is a big deal, right? What are you spending your money on is a big deal. And this is another thing that's really important that is very different. Very different from stars, from idols in North America, particularly from the United States or Canada, right? When you're a K-pop idol and you go on stage, particularly on an international stage, a global stage, you are not just representing your group or yourself. You are representing South Korea, right? So if someone like Justin Bieber goes on a global stage, he doesn't represent Canada, right? He just represents Justin Bieber. If someone like, I don't know why am I blocking on people from the US? Like Taylor Swift goes on a global stage. She's not necessarily representative of the United States, right? She's just representative of Taylor Swift. Now that gets different when you start talking about, someone like if Nicki Minaj goes on a global stage, she is kind of representative of like Black culture in the United States, right? So there's some different layers to this, right? Race and nationality play a bigger role for people who are either not from North America or people of color, particularly when they're an idol. So that's a big thing with K-pop. So what were some things about K-pop though that were thrown around in the readings, particularly the reading about the K-pop industry and the way that idols are trained, and from about intertextuality in K-pop? What are some things that they say about K-pop that might be a little bit different from what we're talking about? What do you think? There's one big thing, I think, or just something you found interesting that do we remember? Do we have a hard time with the readings? Yes, good. Yeah, something that shocked you. Yes, good. Okay, great. Here we go. Yes, women, female idols, girl idols. They're girls. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a bit. But these are young girls who are kind of forced into, not for, and they're not kind of, they're made to control their bodies in particular ways. One of those ways is the diet. Yeah. They do it for boys too. And it is a very low calorie diet, but I think it's a little bit different too. Yeah, in-house production, everything is, they are from the time they are young and audition and get accepted, they are in-house, right? Training, working on it. Yes, shared references. Absolutely. They're always referencing each other. Exactly. Yes, the training is exploitative physically and mentally, right? Yeah, and exactly. They are not seen as serious artists, right? I think that's something that is way overplayed, actually, or over exaggerated in the reading about the art. They are artists. Like they do have talent. Like they're not just trained. They're not just robotic. Like they have to audition and be selected for their talent as dancers, as singers, as musicians in some cases. Like that. Yeah, lots of people audition, but it's not there. Yeah. Contracts are predatory. Yes, they can be very predatory, and you live in a surveillance kind of way. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, very young. Oh my goodness, they're so young. I mean, in my opinion, they're just way too young. Exactly. So one of the things that I think really summed it up was O uses the term, and Professor O doesn't actually just explain what he means by this, but neoliberalism. And neoliberalism is a word that gets tossed around a lot. Has anyone ever heard this word? I have the definition, or I have my definition of it here. What do you think that means? What are some things that people, when they say, oh, that's neoliberal, or they're talking about neoliberalism is destroying the world, or just, something, this is something that you hear a lot. Um, Good. Okay, there's this sense you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah, there's this sense of individualism, right, about it. Yeah, that the individual, you need to do something for yourself, right? Very individualist. Yes, very associated with capitalism. It's a particular way of capitalism. So the term is very loaded, but for this course and for talking about K-pop, what we want to think about is this idea that the market is very free and very unregulated, right? So as opposed to a free market that's free with some caveats to it, right? And so what this means is that you as an individual within society, the ideal freedom for you is to be able to participate in this very free market, right? So freedom is defined by your freedom within this very unregulated market. Does that kind of make sense? And that's kind of the base of the ideology. But what it really looks like, gets very complicated. Okay, so that's different from quote unquote liberalism, because liberalism was about the protection of the individual. This is from a European settler colonial North American standpoint. In the early 20th century, liberalism was about how you need to be protected, that your freedom as an individual needs to be protected by something like an unregulated market, right? Does that kind of make sense? It's hard to understand, but you kind of pick up on what it really entails, okay? Yeah, so we talked about that. Talk about that. Yes, so this is one of the big things. So this goes back to the references, right? It's very genre fluid and ocular centric. What does that mean? If something is ocular centric, if I say it's ocular centric, what is the big deal about it? What does that, what's really important about it? Aesthetics, the visual, the way it looks, right? And that's why people, not just in music, but in visual culture, are really interested in K-pop, because it's very much about the spectacle, the way it looks is important. Good. So K-pop, as we know today, is actually rooted much earlier. And one of the things is, we kind of want to look back a little bit. So under the Japanese colonial period, with a kind of main form of popular music that came in was, it was called trot in English, or enka in Japanese. What is that in unga, probably in Korean? And so I'll just kind of play it a little bit for you, the style as it's sung today, and we can kind of see what you think about it. So please let me know if you cannot hear the sound. Okay. Can you hear that? Did you hear that? So what do you think? What do you notice about that style of music? What are some things that stand out to you about it? There's something in particular that I noticed about it. Yes, vibrato. So the way she kind of moves her voice, just a little bit, vibrates the tone. That's called vibrato. Lots of that. Has anyone ever heard something like pansori, or traditional Korean singing, or traditional Japanese singing? Has anyone ever heard it? Because it's very, I think there's a connection there, right? So in pansori, there's a lot of that, like that kind of, that way of moving between the note above and the note below. There's a lot of that. So there's kind of a connection there between quote unquote traditional singing, right? And then fast forward to the 70s. So I want to show you this. This is when music is under a lot of popular culture, broadly speaking, was under government control. So there was everything had to be reviewed before it was shown on public television. And so this is kind of the kind of music. Oh, wait, no, I have that came out of this era. So this is from Inkigayo. So if you know anything about K-pop, that means popular music. This is still a broadcast shown today where they just have the idol groups come on and they perform their songs and stuff. But this was started, I think it actually started in the 60s, 1960s. So think about this.
네, 접속으로 엮어서 보내드리겠습니다. 송대관 씨 부탁드리죠. 네. 안고 왔단다 내가 봐왔단다 슬픔도 괴로움도 모두 느껴라 안 되는 일 없단다 노력하더니 쨍하고 해뜰날 돌아온단다
I know that was short, but it kind of just repeats. So what do you notice about that? I love showing this one because I think it's so fascinating. Very marching band. Yeah, very marching band. What else? What about the dancers? Yeah, organized dancing, matching outfits. Yeah, the pom-poms. They're like, I had a student be like, are they I think they're cheerleaders actually. Yeah, they are cheerleaders, but they are, you're right. They're well organized, right? There's this coordinated choreography. They're very together, right? What about the song? So, yeah, synchronized swimming, that's a good way, old school. So the song is called On a Sunshiny Day, or on a I don't know, a sunshiny day. How would you say that in English? And he's just thinking about walking on the road and how it's just a nice day. Why do you think, so what do you, is that a kind of topic that you might hear in music and popular music today? Or what do you think? I mean, I know we could, hippie music. Oh yeah, maybe hippie music a little bit. He's basically just thinking about how nice of a day it is. Yeah. Art for art's sake. Yeah. It is very diluted, I think. The lyrics themselves are very diluted. Apolitical. Yeah, exactly. Very apolitical. You really can't, try and make it look like something else. Yeah, exactly. Good. So then we get into the 80s. So what happened in the 80s? 1988, what happened? So one thing is that the CDs and Walkman were becoming much more accessible to everyone, right? But the other thing was less censorship because of democratization. And so what that also meant was a lot of influx of US and European music from the time. So let me show you, this is from the late 80s, 1986. This is Korea's Madonna, is what they call her. You can make the choice of that. So think about what kind of music this sounds like, okay, and looks like too. This is very different from what we just saw 10 years ago.
열기를 더해가는 쇼 한류 가요계의 새별, 이번에는 개성 있는 미모의 가수 김한선 양입니다. 오늘 밤
What do you think about that? What does that remind you of? Yes. Yeah, a workout video, 80s aerobic workout videos. Very much that. It is very much that. It's much more, it's very similar to what's actually going on. Oh, this all of this change. What is going on all over the world at the time. Yeah. In the 80s, this is what a lot of popular music sounded like, no matter where you were. Exactly. So it's kind of with the times now. And then we get to really who is credited with being the first K-pop group, or um, really the roots of K-pop. So now listen to this. This is from 1992. This is kind of a quiet video anyways.
난 알아요 입안이 흐르고 흐르면 누군가가 나를 떠나버려야 한다는 그 사실을 그 이유를 이제는 나도 알 수가 있어요 사랑을 한다는 말을 못했어 어쨌거나 지금은 너무 늦어버렸어 그때 나는 무엇 하고 있었나 그 미소는 너무 아름다웠어
Yeah, very boy band. What else? What kind of musical inspirations can you see? Yeah, West Coast hip. There we go. West Coast hip hop and rap culture from the 90s. Absolutely. Um, so I actually was reading, they say the particular inspiration for that song, this is the first time that anyone in Korea has ever produced a song like that. It sounds like this, was the Pump Up the Jam, and like pump up the jam, pump it up, that song. And I got the power. That I got the power. That's what they say. I don't believe that. I think there was a little bit, I could see it, but I don't think that was the only thing. Because this sounds a lot to me like usually a lot of students say like Vanilla Ice. I think there's some kind of sense of this kind of second hip hop, maybe not necessarily straight out of Compton exactly kind of stuff, like Ice Cube and everyone, but something similar, yeah. Exactly. So what's interesting, or what's very opportune, I guess, about this is that this kind of music is starting to happen right before something that is going to change the economic ideology of East and Southeast Asia broadly happens, which is this International Monetary Fund crisis. Has anyone ever heard of this? And this is going to lead to the Korean wave, Hallyu, which is this idea that Korean pop culture spreads out from Korea, right? Oh yeah, Shane, your business, right? What is IMF? You can probably explain it way better than me. I have tried to understand it. I think I have something. But travel also becomes, and then the Korean government, instead of starting to censor things, they start to put money into things, which is why popular music and film particularly start to take off during this time. So the IMF. So please tell me if I'm wrong, if you know what this is. Essentially, especially the US aligned countries in East and Southeast Asia who had taken loans from places like the US and Western Europe, defaulted on these loans, which caused their currency, their home currency, the value to really drop. So I saw that apparently, like if you can read Korean, this says that one US dollar, so today, $1, and I think like maybe 1,002 or 300 won or so are like about similar. Well, during this year, $1, and it says Um 550, wait, 560, 565 won were equal to one another. Is that right? That doesn't seem right to me. Essentially, the one was, which is what the Korean money is, it was not worth very much. It should be like 5,600. It should be like 5,000. Oh, 5,165 won. There we go. That's what it means. 5,165 won. Yes, exactly. I think, yeah, Andrew's lofty payment plans. Yeah, they got out of it by, doing financial things. I could probably understand it really well if I got into it, but they did fix it eventually. But what this essentially meant was that this idea of, as a middle class person, particularly in South Korea, you were supposed to do great in high school, go to a good college or a good university, and then you would get a job at one of those chaebol companies that we've talked about a few times, Samsung, Hyundai, those kind of things. Well, this changed everybody's idealization that the economy was just really great and stable. Because these kinds of jobs, which were, if you remember, all the way back in the Park Chung-hee era, were receiving these loans through the South Korean government, which were coming from places like the United States, right? And so a lot of these jobs, a lot of people had to be let go from these jobs. So people realized, oh, this economy that we have is not as stable as we thought. So it essentially meant that parents were more willing to look elsewhere for their child's future and try and get them to participate in some other kinds of industries. And one of those was the entertainment industry, right? So that's why we have in the early 2000s this new burgeoning system of entertainment. There's this rise in interest, particularly from parents wanting to help their kids pursue that. So one of the things that they would do, which we talked about, is the scouting, right? So again, I think O overemphasizes the idea of pretty faces because talent was something that they were particularly looking for, right? If you're holding auditions for people and you're wanting them to dance and to sing at these auditions, obviously you're not just looking for pretty faces, right? So what they do is they scout. But what do you notice is that, so how old, this is Minji, who was in my favorite K-pop group, To Anyone, who might be coming back, I don't know. They debuted in 2009. She contracted with YG Entertainment in 2005, and she was born in 1994. So how old was she? I know this sounds so silly, but I'm trying to put this in perspective for everyone. How old was she when she, as a child, was contracted into this training program? 11 years old. When you're 11 years old, are you able to make the kinds of decisions for yourself as what some of these we've read, these trainings are trying to make? Yeah, not at all. I really, I think maybe we say that because we're from the US, but I mean, I've even seen things now in this past year where states are trying to introduce more lenient child labor laws, right? So their parents are the ones who contract them into this, probably because they want to, but I mean, they're a kid. They don't necessarily know about it, right? And then they train for years. As you can see, she contracted with YG in 2005 and didn't make a public debut with the group and the song until 4 years later. And that's not even guaranteed, right? So what do you think? Why would a parent, consent to letting their child do this? And one of the things in O's chapter that he keeps saying over and over again is that this is voluntary, that these people are just kind of going with this, right? Because they think this payout. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. See, even worse. I'll have to use that as an example. Jihyo. I didn't realize that about Jihyo. I do like Twice. I know Twice. Yeah, 10, you start training at 10 years old for this, and then you don't debut until you're 20. Your entire childhood, if you ask me, this is just my opinion, but I think a lot of people agree with me, is ruined, is gone because of that, right? Yeah, exactly. Profit for or living through them on what the parents missed out on. Yeah, right. I think there's a lot of talk about this in North America now. Like there's the child star Jeanette McCurdy. She was on iCarly, right? And she wrote this book. It just came out last year, I think, called I'm Glad My Mother's Dead. And she talks about living as a child star for her mom, right? Yeah, exactly. So, although I think O says it's voluntary, labels it as voluntary, but I think there are legal and moral reasons personally why that is not what's going on here. This is not on part of the child, this is not voluntary, right? So maybe for the family or the parents it's voluntary, but there's a little bit, there's a distinction that's very important that O doesn't quite make, in my opinion. So I don't know. Good. Yes, exactly. Very good point, Connor. If they don't debut, they didn't get the same schooling as everyone else did. So they are not prepared to go into a university or to get that well-paying job, right? Exactly. Um, exactly. It's very risky and it is on the parents. It is not on the child, you ruin your child's life for this. So we need to talk about it. Talk about it this way, I think. Good. Okay, so just briefly, then what happens in 2010? So what's the number one thing worldwide that happens in 2010? What was the one platform that just blows up in the late 2000s that allows people to see? YouTube. Yes, YouTube changed everything. So now they can like schedule releases with music videos. They can have more direct Vimeo. Well, Vimeo was probably important too, right? Um, interactions with fans more directly. They can have reality shows that they're live broadcasting to globally. And then fans, particularly, can very easily create their own responses, right? Their own inspired responses to K-pop music, right? So that's how I got interested in it. That's how I was introduced to it through YouTube and this kind of culture. And so I really think that it's all YouTube, really. Good. Okay. Are there any questions about the K-pop industry or about K-pop before we do the attendance? I know it's kind of complicated and there's a lot to it. I think we kind of get the good basics though. I just hope you kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes a little bit better, especially. Good. Okay. So let's do our attendance question really quick. So last one, this one actually comes from my husband. He told me I should ask you guys this. So if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why? This is so cheesy, I think. I mean, all attendance questions all the icebreakers are cheesy. One superpower. Mind control. That's a good one. Teleportation. Yeah, I thought about teleportation too. That would be very helpful. Invisibility, that would be also very cool. Good. Yeah, teleport, dunk a basketball. Okay, that would be pretty cool. Is that a super? I guess that is kind of a superpower, right? Actually, one of mine is kind of related to that. Telepath, yeah. Telepathic communication would be so cool. Super speed, yes. That would be helpful. I would love to not have to leave, have to organize my time around when I need to leave and get somewhere for sure. Time travel. Yeah. Time travel would be cool. That was another question I thought about asking is if you could go back in time or could go to any, even in the future or something. Telekinesis, yes. Move things with your mind, right? See the future for sure. learn anything. That would be a really great superpower. Be able to master anything, right? So mine was, so as a kid, I always loved, like, I didn't put Mr. Fantastic, but like Mr. Fantastic and like Elastigirl, I always loved elasticity. I thought it was cool to just be able to like stretch yourself out. I don't know why, just be able to sit somewhere and get what you want. The other thing that I really think is cool that I thought was cool is like sorcery, as in like the Marvel universe, the Doctor Strange and just that whole entire group of powers. I think that's really cool too. So yes, understand any language. That would be nice. But it's kind of like, I think learning a language is so fun though. I don't know if it would take the fun out of it. So good. Okay. So, oh, psychometry. Psychometry. Touch things and be able to look at past events. Oh, that would be cool. As an art historian or an historian, that would be like the #1 thing I would love to have. I like that. Ooh, I'm gonna remember that. Okay. So let's talk about intertextuality. So what do you think? What is intertextuality? What does that mean? There's a really easy way to explain it, and then there's a really complicated way to explain it. Allusion. Yes, allusion. I think there's an even easier word than allusion to use, or an even more colloquial word. Allusion is still not very colloquial. Reference. Yeah, it's just the very special study of making references, right? And we do it. And the thing is, why it was such a big deal is when the person who kind of theorized it, who you don't need to know about, but her name was, I don't remember her first name, but her last name is Kristeva. It was in the 1960s. This was like the first time that anyone sat down and said, hey, do you realize we do this all the time? Like, people had understood references, but they had only understood them in like a textual way. They never really understood them in like a visual way or just like a colloquial way, like the way we talk to each other. We make references all the time, right? So that's why this was a big deal, right? Now the thing about it is, when you actually start to get into like the details, it's actually really complicated and very difficult to understand the way it works or like what's going on. But there are some things we can do to kind of help us figure it out. So one of the ways we can think about it is hyperlinking. So Wikipedia is probably even beyond YouTube, Wikipedia is probably the #1 intertextual space that exists. Before it was probably the encyclopedia or the dictionary, probably the encyclopedia, but Wikipedia, right? You are actively hyperlinking text together when you are on or making a Wikipedia or reading a Wikipedia, right? Any kind of wiki, just the entire concept, right? So we want to think about it as in that way. It's a hyperlink, right? It's something you can kind of click on and then it goes into this whole other bit of information. That's exactly how references work, right? Yeah, exactly. The when it's like 3 a.m. and you have this question in your mind, and so you Google it, and then what you Google leads you to this other topic, and then it leads you to this other topic, right? Exact same thing. I mean, that is such an intertextual activity. That is doing intertextuality, if you think about it, right? So we're doing it all the time. We just don't call it that. Good. So there's some things we can think about when we want to practice identifying it, because that's kind of what you need to do for this class. One thing, however, is that between the readings, hopefully those kind of help you. So in the music video, when we're thinking visually, you want to look at the details. So the colors, the fonts, the layouts, the images, the text, and that will help you analyze how the reference is being communicated to you, right? So why were these colors used, or why was this kind of image embedded, like a hyperlink, into the music video, right? So, why does this artwork show up? We're going to talk about a particular artwork that shows up in the BTS music video, Blood, Sweat, Tears. Why does this artwork show up? So it's kind of like you see it, and then instead of just being like, that's an artwork. You ask the question, why this artwork? Why this sculpture? Why this outfit? Why this color? Why this lyric or this saying? Does that make sense? So you want to start questioning these things. And now this is the hard part. You're supposed to use your background knowledge, but the thing is, and this is one of, especially when we look at this music video, not everyone has the same background knowledge, right? Everyone's set of references that they can pull from is different. So really, you're going to want to Google or do your own research on some things. Particularly with the music video we're going to look at, I think it's like, it is definitely not, it was not in my background knowledge until I started seeing an intertextual analysis of the music video. Yeah, and so again, ask questions, question what you see, right? Why is this the connection? And then also, how does it make me feel? Like, how does it make me understand the music video or the song differently because it has this kind of reference? Okay. So do these kinds of, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but these are just kind of practice. This is just advice, I guess, on how to do this. But does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. All right. You probably already do this. You just don't realize you do. Okay. So let me send you, oh, I forgot to do this. Let me send you the link to this music video and you can kind of watch it on your own, or we can watch it a little bit. Okay. So this is Pitam Nunmul, right? Yeah, Pitam Nunmul, which is Blood, Sweat, Tears by BTS. Oh goodness. It's a very long music video, but there's a couple of things that show up in it. I really should start assigning you to watch it before class. I don't know why I didn't. Let me send you the link so you can look through it. Watch a little bit of it. I think it's going to take a while. Watch like the first minute of music at least. Yeah, this entire opening is really interesting, actually. Yeah. So notice, where are they? What kinds of things are in this space? What kind of clothing are they wearing? And then ask, well, start to think why this kind of setting? What is he looking at? What are they interacting with? That kind of question. What is this music, right? And you have this whole other intro, which I would be very impressed if anyone knew what this was. And now we switch. We go to a new setting, right? So what is this kind of setting? What is this? What is going on in here?
내 피땀 눈물 내 마지막 춤을 다 가져가 내 피땀 눈물.
Okay. All right, so what do you think? What is the setting? What do you think this setting is? Particularly this opening one, because this opening scene is very, I think, kind of the most important. Yeah, it's like a museum with classical-esque art. Yes, exactly. Good. It's not just a museum, but it's a particular kind of museum, right? It has this very Greco-Roman kind of take to it. Yes, exactly. Good. Ooh, making connections here. Remind you of the Met Gala promo. Yeah, I think they did this kind of theme, right? Good. It's very Western, right? So the Greco-Roman-ness of it makes you think Western, the idea of the West, right? Good. The opera music. Okay, good. So they have a particular kind of music that they play in the intro that, this is great, Magnus, makes you also connect to European classical art, right? This kind of classicalness of it, right? Good. I think, yeah. So it looks a lot like, I don't think it was this. Actually, I read that that set was created, but it was like inspired by like this museum, the Royal Museum of Fine Arts in Belgium, right? So you can kind of see what are some structural things going on in here that you see in the set. Or what are some aspects of this one that you see in the set? I think there's one that's really obvious. Yes, the pediment doorways, the arches, the use of arches, exactly. The arch and these kinds of triangles on top. The columns, yeah, exactly. They're really trying to make this reference, right, to Greco-Roman culture. Good. So there's this kind of sense of classicalness to it. Good. Yes, ceiling ornamentation. White and gold. Yeah, color is very important too. Good. Okay. So now the question is why? Why this says modern, so this is the other room, right? So why do you think they would use, yes, oh my goodness, Connor, I want to teach on this because particularly on this because this is so, the Red Velvet's Feel My Rhythm is the very similar setup. There's something consistent across K-pop where this is a very particular reference, right? So the modern Baroque, what do you think? Why would you include this kind of reference? What do you think? Yeah, the reference to absinthe. Tell us a little bit more about that. You know, you have this Baroque interior, this Greco-Roman interior. There are particular artworks, sculptures in specific. Okay, atmosphere, element borrowing. Yeah, that's what they're doing, right? But why this? Good. Yes, thank you, Jessica. Struggle between innocent youth and the temptations of adult life. Do you remember from the reading, this is like the music video that Cedarbaugh, Professor Cedarbaugh, really dives into. Yes, it's related to the actual content of the song, right? Yeah, and so it is kind of a question. Is this for the religious reference or is it just the aesthetic? The elegance and the power in the eyes of Western history. Yeah, exactly. This is so the thing about this idea of the innate temptation and sorry, Jessica, you explained it really well. This struggle between good and evil. So I think it's not specific to European or Christian culture, but it is very prominent in European and Christian culture. And you don't see it as prominently as like a broad theme or moral teaching of literature and stories in other cultures as much. You definitely see like the struggle between good and evil, but it's not in the same way. Like the idea that good and evil are constantly like they're the defining forces of history and life, right? I'm not sure why the Pieta. I think it's because it's like, if this is, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know much about Greco-Roman or Renaissance references to Greco-Roman. I think this is Mary holding Jesus, isn't it? Mother Mary holding dead Jesus. Yeah. So, I'm not sure. That's what makes me think it is just kind of an aesthetic thing, right? So, I think maybe good and evil. Well, think about this. Think about this from a good and evil standpoint. How is this good versus evil here? How is Mother Mary holding Jesus's crucified body? Yeah, okay, there you go. That too. The lamentation of Christ is kind of like the lamentation for innocence, right? Which is in this song, right? And the crucifixion is like this evil, right? This evil happened to Christ. I think there's a couple of different takes on what exactly, if the crucifixion is evil or like destiny and like all those kinds of things too, but you can kind of see it, right? Yeah, there's definitely I think there is something there with good versus evil. But definitely there is in this painting, this Bruegel painting, which I guess you see, and I thought this was interesting, right? You see these kinds of paintings, especially these Renaissance. Is this Renaissance or is this Dutch Golden Age? Why didn't I put the year here? This Dutch paint, I'm pretty sure this is a, so anyways, this is not Dutch old, this is Italian Renaissance, I think. And so you see this, do I have a close-up? Yeah, here we go. Yes, here we go. So you can see in this image, in this painting, right? He's looking at this painting, and what do you notice just by looking at it? I mean, I have it written here, but how can we kind of see that this top is heaven and this bottom is hell? What do you think? What are things that strike you about this painting? Yeah, demons at the bottom, angels at top. There's a lot of chaos, exactly, at the bottom. And then there's like the composition, right? There's this middle line across the painting, and then definitely there's like darkness and chaos. There's chaos all around, but definitely like darkness here in the foreground, or like it's not really a foreground background kind of deal, but in the bottom half, and then a lot of light in the top half. Yeah, good versus evil, right? Exactly. Good. So, that's why this one was picked. So, Jessica, I guess you must know a lot about BTS then, because I didn't know that. Yeah, J-Hope was already associated with a motherly figure in his short film Mama. Okay. Okay. So they are actually intertexting in this music video themselves, right? They're referencing themselves. They're continuing the storyline about the member of the group, right? J-Hope. Good. So this is the end scene, isn't it? And what's kind of going on here? So thinking about good and evil, yeah, angel with black wings. And then who is this person though? Where did we see this person earlier? I'll give you a hint. Yeah, so he's the main character. This is Jean, not J-Hope, but Jean in the group. You don't need to know their names. He was the one looking at the painting, right? So he's the one who's struggling with this good versus evil. And then just by looking at it, we don't have to, we're going to look at the lyrics in a moment, but you just by seeing the way these scenes play out, what does it seem like he ends up doing? This is at the end of the music video, right? So what does he end up doing? Gives into temptation. Very good. Yes, kissing it, making a choice, and he chooses temptation. Okay. So how does that connect with the lyrics? Well, very indirectly would be my answer. So the chorus lyrics are my blood, sweat, tears, and my last dance, take it all away. And then they just repeat that, right? So I don't really think from the chorus you can get much from it, but in the verses, maybe a little bit. My blood, sweat, and tears, my body, mind, and soul. I know well they're all yours. This is a spell that will punish me. Peaches and cream, sweeter than chocolate. Wait, sweeter than, is that what it says? Sweeter than sweet. And then he talks about the chocolate wings, but your wings are the devil's. Kiss me, it's okay if it hurts, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah, the lyrics are very metaphorical, right? So, which are most lyrics in a song, and songs are. So they're kind of, I like that, personifying temptation. I like that idea. So this is what they sing in so that angel scene is at the very end of the song after they've like sung. This is just the first verse, but sung everything, right? So the first scene is him trying to deal with that artwork, right, in the museum. And then they sing the song. Ah, maybe it is, right, yeah. So maybe the song is, in personifying temptation, it's like foreshadowing the outcome, right? What Gene is going to be doing, what Gene is going to choose in the end, right? Exactly. Good. Yeah, so anything else? I think there's a couple of things. Is there anything kind of strange about the lyrics, do you think? What other kind of particularly what other kinds of, not just good and evil, but what other ways, what other kind of juxtapositions in the lyrics do they make? There's one in particular that I find interesting. Yeah, light and dark with chocolate. So related to chocolate, maybe light and dark, but I think maybe there's something else. They're using a different kind of sense, a different kind of sense, not visual. Yeah, there we go. Taste. Peaches and cream, sweeter than sweet, chocolate cheeks, but your wings are the devil's. There is a bitter next to your sweet. Yeah, taste, right? And then he talks about if I get drunk, the whiskey is you, right? So it's kind of evoking taste as well in the lyrics. But I don't think you see that at all in the music video. So that's something else to kind of consider. Oh, why is this working? I'm not sure how old they are. So in Korea you have to be 19 to drink or 20 to drink. But I will say there's been many times in K-pop that they've talked about getting drunk or having a drink, and that particular idol was not old enough to legally drink. A while ago, and sometimes they'll show an idol who's not legally allowed to drink in like a bar, sitting with like a cocktail in front of them sometimes too. It's kind of a big deal because it's, yeah, Sistar, there's a group called Sistar who I don't think they're not around anymore, but they particularly had a controversy with that back in like 2012 or 13. Okay, so the whole reference they're making is to this book. Where'd it go? To this book called Demian. And so I would not have picked this music video to exemplify because I don't think anyone in the US really knows about this book. But the Professor Stiller, she's actually from Germany. So I think that's why she likes this one. And Sedarbal Seiji, I'm not sure where she's from. She might be from North America, but this is just a really popular music video. So I think that's why she picked it to analyze. So there's a lot of different things like we've discussed that are going into it, the good and evil and temptation. So this is just a summary of all of that. You don't need to be able to discuss oh, that's interesting. Barely legal. Yeah. Trying to protect. Okay, gotcha. So Damien, I guess, is about this boy who's struggling to find himself it's a novel. It's a novel from the early 20th century. And it's all about the struggle between good and evil. And that's another reference that they're making with like this angel, I think, is personified in it. Right? Yeah. So this is something that's personified in the book, Kisses an Angel with Black Wings. That's from Demian. Okay. So does that make sense? I feel like that's a lot. I always honestly, I have a hard time teaching this music video, particularly because there's just a lot going on and it's really not in everybody's background knowledge wheelhouse, but hopefully you kind of get it, right? You probably have already done this and you just don't realize that you were already doing it, right? Okay. So the one thing though to think about is that there's many different interpretations that are possible. So like, especially with this one, if you don't, I think someone already mentioned, like, is it for religious meaning or is it just aesthetic, right? So if you're someone with a Christian background, maybe not in North America, but like if you're like Catholic and you're from Europe, you probably would have a more kind of Christian understanding of a lot of these icons that show up. But it's not really a religious meaning in this particular case. But to a Christian audience, if they saw this and they had some kind of connection with these icons, probably it would, right? So that's something to think about. Who is the audience? And so what Seiji argues is because of this, it's a good way, using intertextuality in these music videos and songs is a good way to hit a wide audience. And so my question to you is, do you agree? Do you think that's true? Do you think intertextuality is helpful in music videos? You know, what do you generally think about this? About her kind of take that it's helpful. It's a helpful marketing tool. Yeah, depends on the extent. Yeah, like you know, how many references? How many references? How deep are the references? Exactly. I think like this, in this case, like I just said, I find this music video, its intertextuality very confusing because it's not something that's in my background knowledge, right? I find it cool and fascinating, but like I would have to have done so much research to understand that that's what's going on. Yeah, I think it does get audiences to rewatch the music videos, but then I also wonder, like, as a viewer myself, am I rewatching the music videos because of the references in it or because of the aesthetic of it, right? Um, Not sure. Yeah, catch a larger range of people. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a puzzle. It's kind of fun. It is fun in some ways, depending on what you think or what you have in your background. Yeah, exactly. It does give it much more of a story or meaning behind it rather than just, you know, it's a song. Good. And yeah, I do agree. I think it can help people open up to new ideas. In a lot of it make you kind of consider what's going on and think more about it, right? Good. I think it's helpful. I think in other ways it's very complicated. I think it's complicated. Um Yeah, so like if you're someone who, you know, if you're a fan of them, this is a good point. Yes, Jessica, is if you're a fan of them and you figure out and you kind of learn, oh, this is about this novel called Demian, you probably would be prompted to go find that book and read it. You know, that's a really cool thing in a lot of ways. And then you're opened up to this entirely new artwork, right? This piece of literature. So I think that is really cool about it, right? And that's what we were talking about earlier with it's like hyperlinking. It makes you go find a new thing, new bits of information. Good. Okay, so just the last few bits of information here. There's been some interesting developments in the K world, if you will. So this is interesting. If you're someone who follows Broadway, you might have heard that there was a K-pop musical that it started off Broadway, like off Broadway, and then they brought it onto Broadway, and it lasted a week and it closed. And the main reason was because critics said there was too much Korean in it. There was too much Korean in a K-pop musical. Could you believe that? Wow. I'm not sure if it's going to come back or not. I know they're like rescripting and they're trying to reorganize it, but just goes to show, I think, that not every show is meant for every audience. Which I think is also true when we're thinking intertextually, right? The references are geared towards particular audiences. Different audiences can receive them differently. If you know this actor, Yu Ain was in a lot of different things. He was in one of the oh my goodness. Yeah, is there too much America in Hamilton then? Yeah, could you imagine if Hamilton went to like South Korea and they said there's too many references to like US history in it? Like that's why we don't like it. But anyways, this actor has come under fire for using so number one, so a big thing is when an actor comes under fire for anything, like drugs, it is publicized everywhere in South Korea. And so one of the things is like marijuana, which, you know, if we found out an actor or a singer in the US from North America was smoking marijuana, no one would care. But propofol is actually a little bit of a harder drug, I think. It's like a hallucinogen. And apparently they think there's a third one, but they're just basically showing you this as an example of like your private life is very publicized. Like if you do something like this and you're in K-pop, oh, okay, it's 15. If you need to go, you can go. You know, it's everyone's gonna know about it. BTS is going in the army. I think one of them already started, at least. And then last year, Blackpink, the K-pop group, idol group, they are actually Times Entertainer of the Year. I think they're the first K-pop group to ever be Times Entertainer of the Year. Good, which is crazy. All right, thank you all so much for the mini mester. You know, if you have questions or need to ask me about anything, stay around. You know, work on your final. If you have any issues or questions about it, send me an email.